The atmosphere at the community center was abuzz with excited chatter as volunteers bustled around, putting the final touches on the charity event. Everyone was eager to raise money for a local food bank, except for one woman named Karen. "This is an outrage," Karen bellowed, storming into the main hall. All eyes turned to her as she marched up to the event organizer, Susan. "How dare you serve these cheap, processed snacks? Don't you know I'm on a gluten-free, low-carb, organic, non-GMO diet?" Susan blinked, taken aback by the sudden confrontation. "I'm sorry, Karen, but these are the donations we received. We wanted to make sure there was food for everyone who attends." Karen scoffed, her nostrils flaring. "Well, that's unacceptable. I won't have my name associated with this greasy, unhealthy trash. Cancel the event immediately." The room fell silent, save for the sound of Karen's heels clicking against the hardwood floor as she stormed out. Susan stared after her, mouth agape, unsure of how to proceed. This was supposed to be a joyous community gathering, but Karen had just thrown a wrench in the works. As Karen burst through the double doors, she nearly collided with her neighbor, Liz, who was hauling boxes of donated items. "Whoa, Karen, slow down. What's the matter?" "The matter?" Karen sneered. "That ridiculous charity event is serving processed, unhealthy food. I won't stand for it. I'm putting a stop to the whole thing." Liz's brow furrowed. "But Karen, this event is for a good cause. Those snacks are just what people donated. Why does it matter so much to you?" "Because I have a reputation to uphold," Karen huffed. "I can't be associated with such low-quality, disgusting food. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to make some calls." Before Liz could respond, Karen stormed off, leaving a trail of confusion and frustration in her wake. As she whipped out her phone, her fingers flew across the screen, determined to shut down the event before it ever got started. "This is unacceptable," she muttered, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the phone's surface. "I'm going to make sure everyone knows how disappointed I am in this blatant disregard for health and nutrition. Just wait until I get the media involved." Karen's lips curled into a vindictive smile as she hit send on a scathing email to the local news outlets. This charity event was about to become a public relations nightmare, all because of her uncompromising standards. She would show these volunteers that you can't just serve any old junk and expect her to be okay with it. As the email zipped off into the digital aether, Karen felt a surge of satisfaction. Now it was time to make a few more phone calls and really put the pressure on. This event was going down, whether the organizers liked it or not. News of Karen's outburst spread like wildfire through the tight-knit community. Within an hour, Susan's phone was ringing off the hook with concerned volunteers and sponsors. "What do you mean Karen wants to cancel the event?" One of the sponsors exclaimed. "This is the biggest fundraiser we have all year. We can't just shut it down because of one woman's dietary preferences." Susan sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose. I know. But you know how Karen is. She's already reached out to the local news outlets, threatening to turn this into a PR nightmare if we don't comply." "Well, we can't let her bully us into this," the sponsor replied firmly. "This charity means too much to too many people. We have to find a way to move forward despite her antics." Susan nodded, her mind racing. "Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to call an emergency meeting with the other organizers. We need to strategize and come up with a plan to handle Karen. This event is happening, whether she likes it or not." Hanging up the phone, Susan hurried to gather the core team. As they filed into the conference room, their faces etched with concern, she cleared her throat. "All right, everyone, we have a situation on our hands," she began. "As you've probably heard, Karen has thrown a fit over the snacks we're serving at the event. She's threatening to cancel the whole thing and go to the media." A collective groan rippled through the group. Karen's entitled behavior was well known in the community, but this was a new low, even for her. "So, what are we going to do?" asked one of the volunteers. "We can't just cave to her demands. That would set a terrible precedent." "Exactly," Susan replied. "We need to stand our ground." But undeterred by the organizers' attempts to salvage the event, Karen continued her relentless campaign to shut it down. She spent the next day making call after call, bombarding local news stations and social. The day of the charity event dawned bright and clear, but the air was thick with tension. The organizers had worked tirelessly to prepare for Karen's arrival, ensuring that a selection of high-end, organic snacks were available to appease her dietary demands. As the doors opened and the first guests began to trickle in, all eyes were on the entrance, waiting with bated breath for Karen to make her grand appearance. Finally, the sound of clicking heels echoed through the hall, and there she was, dressed in an impeccable designer outfit, surveying the scene with a critical eye. Susan took a deep breath and approached her cautiously. "Karen, thank you for coming. We're so glad you could join us today." Karen's lips pursed into a tight smile. "Well, I couldn't very well miss an event that has the entire community in an uproar. Now could I?" She paused, her gaze sweeping over the tables of snacks. "I see you've managed to procure some more suitable options. Let's hope the rest of the event lives up to my standards." Susan nodded, trying not to let her frustration show. "We've worked hard to make this a meaningful and impactful event. I hope you'll give it a chance and see the good we're doing for the community." Karen hummed noncommittally, already moving on to inspect the other displays. As she made her way through the hall, she couldn't help but notice the wary glances and hushed whispers that followed her. Clearly, the other volunteers were not thrilled by her presence. Undeterred, Karen continued her inspection, pausing to examine the donation bins and check the temperatures of the food trays. She tisked disapprovingly at a tray of store-bought cookies, muttering something about high-fructose corn syrup under her breath. Liz, who had been tasked with keeping a close eye on Karen, approached her cautiously. "Karen, is everything to your liking?" Karen turned to her, her brow furrowed in a frown. "Not exactly, Liz. These snacks may be marginally better than the processed garbage you had before, but they still don't meet my standards. I hope you're planning to do better for the next event." Liz felt her blood boil, but she forced a polite smile. "Karen, this isn't about you or your preferences. This event is about helping those in need in our community. Perhaps you could try to focus on that rather than the snacks." Karen's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Liz thought she might explode. But then, a calculating look crossed her face, and she nodded slowly. "Very well, Liz. I suppose I can overlook the subpar refreshments if it means helping the less fortunate." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the bustling hall. "Although, I do hope you'll consider my input for future events. After all, I'm sure my expertise could be invaluable." Liz clenched her jaw, but before she could respond, Karen had already moved on, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor as she made her way through the crowd. As the charity event kicked into full swing, Karen found herself surrounded by a sea of unfamiliar faces. She had expected to be the center of attention, her presence a testament to the event's importance. Instead, she found herself largely ignored, with the other volunteers and attendees focused on the task at hand. Frustration began to simmer within her. How dare these people disregard her opinions and expertise? Didn't they realize that without her, this event would be a complete disaster? Determined to assert her influence, Karen made her way to the center of the hall, where the donation bins were set up. She peered inside, her nose wrinkling in disdain at the assortment of canned goods and non-perishable items. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice carrying over the din of the crowd. "Whoever is in charge of these donations, I have a few suggestions." A young woman, her arms laden with boxes, turned to her with a weary expression. "Yes, ma'am. How can I help you?" "Well, for starters, these canned goods are utterly unacceptable," Karen sniffed. "They're loaded with preservatives and sodium. I insist that you replace them with organic, low-sodium alternatives." The woman blinked, taken aback by Karen's sudden demand. But ma'am, these are the donations we've received. We can't simply exchange them all for specialty items. That would be a waste of resources. Karen's eyes narrowed. A waste of resources. Don't you understand that these people deserve the best? Processed, unhealthy food is not going to help them at all. Ma'am, I understand your concerns, but this event is about providing what we can to those in need, the woman replied, her voice calm but firm. We're grateful for every donation, regardless of the specifics. Karen's lips pressed into a thin line. Well, I'm not satisfied with this. I demand that you take immediate action to improve the quality of these donations. The woman shook her head. I'm sorry, but that's not possible. This event is run by volunteers, and we're doing the best we can with the resources we have. If you have an issue with it, you're welcome to take your concerns elsewhere. Karen's face flushed with indignation. How dare this insolent woman dismiss her so easily? Didn't she understand the importance of Karen's role in this event? Fuming, Karen turned on her heel and stormed off, her heels clicking against the floor in a staccato rhythm. She had to find a way to regain control of the situation, or this entire event would be a complete disaster. As Karen stalked through the crowded event hall, her anger simmering, she spotted the event organizer, Susan, chatting with a group of volunteers. Determined to assert her influence, she marched over and cleared her throat loudly, drawing their attention. Susan, a word, if you please, she said, her tone dripping with disdain. Susan turned to her, a pained expression on her face. Yes, Karen, how can I help you? It's come to my attention that the donations you've collected are woefully inadequate, Karen began, her eyes sweeping over the crowd. These people deserve better than this processed, unhealthy trash. Susan took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. Karen, I understand your concerns, but these donations were given in good faith by members of our community. We can't simply discard them. Can't or won't, Karen retorted, her eyes narrowing. I'm telling you, Susan, this event will be a failure if you don't make some immediate changes. Changes? Susan echoed, her brow furrowing. Karen, this event is not about you or your preferences. It's about supporting our community and those in need. We're not going to alter the event to cater to your unreasonable demands. Karen's jaw tightened, and her eyes flashed with fury. Unreasonable demands. I'll have you know that I'm one of the most influential members of this community. My opinions and input should carry significant weight. That may be true, Karen, but this event is not about you, Susan said firmly. It's about the people we're trying to help. Your personal preferences simply don't matter in this context. Karen's nostrils flared, and she opened her mouth to retort, but before she could, a familiar voice interrupted. Karen, there you are. Liz pushed her way through the crowd, a tense smile plastered on her face. I've been looking all over for you. The event is in full swing, and we could really use your help. Karen's brow furrowed in confusion. My help? What could you possibly need me to do? Liz's smile widened, but her eyes held a subtle warning. Well, we've got some last-minute donor gift bags that need to be assembled, and I know how talented you are at that sort of thing. Would you mind lending a hand? Karen hesitated, her gaze darting between Liz and Susan. She could sense the underlying tension, and a part of her wanted to refuse to assert her dominance. But the thought of being seen as uncooperative, of potentially jeopardizing her reputation, made her reconsider. I suppose I could spare a few minutes, she said, her voice dripping with reluctance. Liz's smile brightened. Wonderful. Come with me, and I'll show you where we need the extra help. As Karen followed Liz away from the confrontation, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of unease. She had come to this event expecting to be the center of attention, but instead, she found herself being sidelined and ignored. And she didn't like it one bit. As Karen found herself relegated to the task of assembling donor gift bags, her frustration only continued to grow. She had expected to be the guest of honor, her opinions and demands heeded without question. But instead, she was being treated like just another volunteer, her influence seemingly diminished. Reluctantly, she began to stuff the bags with the donated items, her movements stiff and mechanical. Liz hovered nearby, offering occasional guidance and encouragement, but Karen largely ignored her, her mind consumed by the need to regain control of the situation. As she worked, Karen couldn't help but overhear snatches of conversation from the other volunteers. They seemed genuinely enthusiastic about the event, chatting excitedly about the donations they had received and the impact they hoped to make. The contrast between their genuine passion and her own growing resentment only fueled her anger. "This is ridiculous," she muttered under her breath, slamming a can of beans into one of the gift bags. "These people have no idea what they're doing. If they had just listened to me, this event would be so much better." Liz, who had been observing Karen's increasingly agitated behavior, approached her cautiously. "Is everything okay, Karen? You seem a bit tense." Karen's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing. "Tense? Of course I'm tense, Liz. This entire event is a disaster waiting to happen, and no one seems to care." Liz sighed, her patience beginning to wear thin. "Karen, I understand that you have strong opinions about how this event should be run, but you need to understand that it's not all about you. This is a community effort, and the volunteers are doing their best to make a difference." "Their best?" Karen scoffed. "Their best is clearly not good enough. These donations are a complete disgrace, and the refreshments are hardly any better. I'm appalled that my name is even associated with this travesty." Liz's brow furrowed, and she crossed her arms over her chest. "Look, Karen, no one is forcing you to be here. If you're so unhappy with how things are being run, you're more than welcome to leave." Karen's eyes widened, and for a moment, she was stunned into silence. "Leave? How dare you suggest that I—" "Karen, this event is about helping people in need," Liz interrupted, her voice firm. "If you can't put your own agenda aside and focus on that, then you're not welcome here. We're doing important work, and we don't need your constant criticism and interference." The color drained from Karen's face, and she opened and closed her mouth several times, searching for a retort. But for once, the words seemed to fail her. Without another word, she turned and stormed out of the hall, her heels clicking furiously against the floor. As the doors slammed shut behind her, a hush fell over the crowd, and the volunteers exchanged uneasy glances. Had Karen finally met her match? As the dust settled after Karen's dramatic exit, the event organizers and volunteers breathed a collective sigh of relief. The tension in the air had been palpable, and they were grateful to have finally put a stop to Karen's relentless interference. Susan, the event's lead organizer, approached Liz with a grateful smile. "Thank you for stepping in and handling that. I don't know what we would have done if you hadn't intervened." Liz shrugged, a wry smile playing on her lips. "Honestly, I'm just glad she's gone. I don't know how you've managed to put up with her for so long." "It's been a constant battle," Susan admitted. "But this time, I think we really got through to her. Hopefully, she'll think twice before trying to sabotage our efforts again." Liz nodded, her gaze sweeping over the bustling crowd. "I have to say, it's been amazing to see how the community has rallied behind this event. Even without Karen's input, we've managed to pull off something truly special." Susan beamed with pride. "Absolutely. This has been a true testament to the power of community and the willingness of people to come together for a good cause. I'm so grateful to everyone who has donated their time and resources to make this happen." As the event continued to unfold, the volunteers and attendees seemed to have forgotten all about Karen's outburst. They were too busy enjoying the music, the food, and the camaraderie that filled the air. The donations continued to pour in, and the organizers were confident that they would be able to provide a substantial amount of support to the local food bank. Meanwhile, Karen fumed in the solitude of her home, her carefully cultivated image of power and influence shattered. She had expected to be the center of attention, her opinions and demands catered to without question. But instead, she had been relegated to the sidelines, her voice dismissed and her presence unwanted. As she paced her luxurious living room, Karen's mind raced, trying to come up with a way to regain control of the situation. But try as she might, she couldn't shake the feeling of defeat that had settled over her. For once, her sense of entitlement and her relentless pursuit of perfection had backfired. The very community she had tried to manipulate had turned against her, refusing to bend to her will. And in the end, it was the volunteers, the people she had so blatantly disregarded, who had emerged victorious. As the realization sank in, Karen felt a pang of something she hadn't experienced in a long time: humility. Perhaps, just perhaps, she had learned a valuable lesson of the true meaning of community and the importance of compassion over personal preferences. Only time would tell if Karen would carry this experience with her, or if she would simply revert to her old ways, unwilling to let go of her need for control. But for now, the charity event continued to thrive, a testament to the power of people coming together for a common cause, and the ability of a determined community to overcome even the most formidable of obstacles.